They gave Olyssia Vale a stage because a scaffold would have looked too honest. The Dragon Court Puppet Theater glowed beneath 7 rings of black chandeliers, each one burning with trapped dragon fire that made every velvet seat look redder than blood. Nobles filled the curved balconies in silk and scaled gold, whispering behind painted fans, while servants carried wine dark enough to hide poison. Below them, on the polished obsidian stage, Olyssia stood barefoot beside a row of coal marionettes. The puppets hung from silver strings. So did her dignity. Tonight was the Bride Oracle's celebration. At moonrise, Dragon King Kairon Sol would present Marixa Dorn before the court as his chosen oracle bride, the woman whose visions would guide his reign through famine, war, and flame. Before that sacred announcement, Marixa had requested entertainment. She had called it symbolic cleansing. A false vision carver humbled before the true oracle bride, so the court could enter the new reign without ash clinging to its prophecy. Not music. Not dancers. Olyssia, a woman once permitted to carve ceremonial figures for dragon rites, now dressed in a plain ash-gray performer's gown with soot staining her sleeves, and the court's laughter already waiting for her to break. Marixa sat in the front royal box, radiant in white gold silk, her oracle veil pinned with rubies shaped like tears. She looked too beautiful to be cruel at first glance. That had always been her sharpest weapon. Beside her, Dragon King Kairon Sol watched from a throne of black lacquer and dragon bone, his face unreadable beneath the firelight. He wore no wedding crown yet, only the dark, scaled mantle of his house, and the faint ember mark at his throat, burning low like a warning kept under skin. Olyssia did not look at him for long. If she did, she might remember the moment 3 days ago, when he had heard Marixa suggest this performance and said nothing. Silence, in a king, could become a command. He had not mocked her. That was what made it worse. A king did not need laughter to make humiliation lawful. Bride Oracle Marixa lifted one pale hand. "Begin with the little courtship scene," she said. "The one where the low girl mistakes kindness for favor." Laughter moved through the theater. Olyssia's fingers tightened around the control bar. The first marionette hung before her, a Colwood girl with a carved face too plain to be mistaken for anyone else. Olyssia had made her years ago from a fallen Colwood branch found near the old dragon kilns. She had carved the puppet's small hands carefully, because hands carried more truth than mouths in court. Beside it hung a Dragon King puppet, a bride puppet with a painted veil, and 6 smaller court figures with hollow black eyes. Marixa smiled. "Do not tremble, Olyssia. The court came to enjoy your talent." Her talent, not her grief, not the scandal that had pushed her from right carver to public joke, not the accusation Marixa had breathed into the court like perfume, that Olyssia had once tried to forge an oracle scene to place herself near the king. Olyssia lowered her gaze to the puppets. Colwood remembers heat. That was what her grandmother had told her before the old kilns were sealed. Not truth, not justice. Heat. Every lie spoken near Dragonfire left warmth in the grain, and Colwood kept it the way bone kept an old break. But wood could remember and still remain silent, unless someone gave it flame. Tonight, Marixa had ordered the theater chandeliers lit with dragonfire. Olyssia drew the first string. The coal girl puppet bent in an awkward bow. The court applauded as if humiliation were music. Olyssia moved the Dragon King puppet closer. The little king lowered one carved hand. The coal girl lifted hers toward it, hopeful and foolish by design. Before their wooden fingers touched, Marixa's bride puppet swept between them, glittering with painted gold. The court laughed harder. A noble woman called, "Careful, little ash girl. Crowns do not marry soot." Olyssia's face did not change. On the royal box, Kairon's fingers stopped against the armrest. It was a small thing, too small to be apology. but he had noticed the line had not been part of the performance. Marixa noticed him noticing. Her smile sharpened. Continue. Olyssia lifted the next string. The Coal Girl puppet stumbled backward, as the court expected. Then it was supposed to fall. That was the script Marixa had sent to Olyssia's chamber before dawn, written in a priestess' hand so elegant it almost hid the malice. The Ash Girl falls. The bride laughs. The court applauds. The king looks away. Olyssia had read the final direction 3 times. Then she had folded the paper and burned it over a candle, not because it erased anything, but because her hands needed one small act that was still hers. Now, under Dragonfire, the Coal Girl puppet did not fall. Olyssia felt the resistance first. The control bar heated in her grip. Coal splinters pushed through the polished wood and bit into her palm. She almost dropped it. Almost. A tug moved against the string, not from above, from below. Her pulse changed. The puppet's head lifted by itself. The theater laughter thinned. Olyssia froze with the control bar in both hands. The Coal Girl moved one carved foot forward, then another, not smoothly like a trained performer's trick, wrongly, slowly, as if something remembered how to stand after being made to kneel too often. Marixa's fan paused halfway to her lips. Olyssia tried to pull the string back. The string snapped. A silver thread curled down through the firelight and landed on the stage like a dead worm. No one laughed now. The Coal Girl puppet stood without its string. Kairon leaned forward. A master puppeteer from the side curtain whispered, "Impossible." Marixa rose from her seat. "Olyssia, not a command to continue. A warning." Olyssia looked at the puppet, then at the bride puppet still hanging from its strings. She should have stepped away. She should have let the guards seize her before the court decided the spectacle had become witchcraft. But if she stepped away now, Marixa would own even the truth when it came. Instead, Olyssia lifted her empty hand. Not to control, to ask. The Coal Girl turned toward her. Its hollow black eyes glowed a dull red. Then, from somewhere above the stage, the musicians began playing Marixa's ceremony song. No one had ordered them. The bride puppet jerked. One silver string snapped, then another. The court watched as the painted bride lowered herself from the hanging rig with delicate, unnatural grace. Its carved veil caught fire at the edge, but did not burn away. The flame only revealed black marks beneath the paint, tiny strokes hidden in the wood grain. Marixa gripped the edge of the royal box. Kairon looked from the puppet to her hand. For the first time that night, the Dragon King did not look silent. He looked uncertain. The bride puppet raised one small blackened arm. It pointed at Marixa. A gasp spread through the theater. Marixa recovered faster than the rest. "Seize the performer." 4 guards stepped toward the stage. Kairon's voice stopped them. No one touched the marionette. The guards froze. Olyssia did too, not because he had saved her, because he had not said no one touches Olyssia, and there it was. Even his first mercy had chosen the wood before the woman who carved it. Marixa turned to him, soft and wounded in an instant. "My king, she is corrupting the right." Kairon did not answer her. His eyes remained on the stage. The Coal Girl puppet bent down, picked up its severed string, and wrapped it around the bride puppet's wrist. Then the theater chandeliers flared white. Every coal marionette on the rack turned its head toward the royal box at once. Olyssia felt the splinters still buried in her palm heat again. The puppets were not moving because she controlled them. They were moving because her blood had given the remembered heat somewhere to go. And in Marixa's own ceremony music, the puppets began to act out a scene no living person had agreed to perform. The first figure to enter the scene was not the Coal Girl. It was Marixa. carved in white gold paint, holding a prophecy knife over an unfinished oracle puppet. Olyssia knew that puppet. She had carved its face before Marixa ever claimed her first vision. The music did not stop when Marixa ordered it to. That was the first sign the theater no longer belonged to the living. Her voice cut across the royal box, sharp enough to make two violinists flinch. Silence the strings. The musicians lowered their bows. The song kept playing, not from the orchestra pit, not from the balcony horns. It rose from the stage itself, thin and ceremonial, a bridal melody dragged through ash. Every note sounded like something beautiful, remembering the hand that had used it. The white gold Marixa puppet stepped into the center of the stage, prophecy knife raised over the unfinished oracle puppet. No one looked at Olyssia when the knife lifted. They looked at Marixa. For one breath, the bride oracle did not move. Her face remained composed, but the rubies in her veil trembled against her cheeks. Then she smiled. It was the wrong smile. Too careful, too clean. "Coal sorcery," she said. "The performer has corrupted the cleansing rite." The word sorcery moved faster than fear. A few nobles leaned back. A priest in the second balcony touched his throat charm. Guards shifted at the stage stairs, eager for an order simple enough to obey. Olyssia did not retreat. The splinters buried in her palm heated until her fingers nearly opened against her will. She looked down. Tiny black points had pushed beneath her skin where the control bar had bitten her. They glowed dull red, not like flame, but like coals under breath. Coalwood remembers heat. Not truth, not names. Heat. It could not tell the court what happened. It could only burn where a lie had touched it. If she let the puppets move alone, Marixa would call them witchcraft, and the court would believe the word before the scene finished. Olyssia had to read what the wood remembered before Marixa named the memory a crime. She stepped toward the unfinished oracle puppet. The guards moved too. Kairon's voice stopped them again. No one touches her hands. This time, the command struck differently. Not enough. But closer, Olyssia looked up at him. He stood in the royal box now, one hand on the black rail, the ember mark at his throat, burning brighter than before. His face was still guarded, still kingly, still too late. Her gaze dropped to his hand, then back to his eyes. "You learned which part of me matters to the proof," she said. The theater heard her. So did Marixa. Kairon's jaw tightened. Olyssia did not soften. He had protected the marionettes before he protected the woman who carved them. A second command did not erase the first wound. It only proved he had finally seen where the blade was. Marixa turned to him, voice trembling with beautiful outrage. "My king! She is performing defiance inside my consecration." "No," Olyssia said. The white gold puppet lowered the knife by one small inch. Olyssia lifted her bleeding palm toward it. "I am trying to find what you heated into the wood." Marixa's eyes sharpened. "There. Fear, not insult." Olyssia touched the unfinished oracle puppet's face. Pain shot through her palm. The stage vanished for half a breath. She saw heat. Not images as people saw them. Not memory with clean edges. Heat had shape in coalwood. Pressure where fingers held too hard. Warmth where breath had lied too close. Burning where dragonfire had sealed a stolen right. The unfinished puppet had been held near dragonfire in a narrow room, not the theater. A smaller chamber, a brazier made from black shell. Marixa's ceremony song humming under a woman's breath, and Olyssia's own carving marks beneath someone else's paint. She pulled her hand away, breathing hard. The puppet's face remained blank to the court. Unfinished, mouth uncut, eyes only shallow hollows. But Olyssia knew the curve of the cheek. She had carved it years ago for the first vision rite, before the court took the rite from her workshop and declared it improper for a woman without oracle blood to shape prophetic vessels. Marixa stepped down from the royal box stairs with 2 attendants behind her. She is lying with gestures now. She has always wanted my place. Olyssia looked at the white gold puppet holding the knife. Then why does your puppet remember my blade strokes? The court shifted. Marixa's smile hardened. Because you made these toys, that proves nothing but your access to them. No, Olyssia said. I carved the unfinished oracle face before your first vision was ever announced. A hush moved through the lower rows. Kairon's eyes darkened. Olyssia. She did not turn to him. Do not say my name like it becomes clean because you are finally afraid. The words landed between them. Marixa seized the pause. Enough. If the coalwood remembers heat, then burn the puppet cold. Let holy dragonfire clear the corruption. One attendant hurried forward with a silver brazier. Olyssia felt the coal girl puppet move behind her. Not enough for the court to see. Enough for Olyssia to understand. The wood did not want more flame. It wanted the right hand. Olyssia reached for the unfinished oracle puppet. Marixa snapped, Do not touch it. Olyssia touched it anyway. The splinters in her palm flared so hot her knees nearly buckled. She gripped the puppet's blank face and turned it toward the white gold bride figure. The marionette stage answered. Silver strings lifted by themselves and rearranged the scene. The white gold Marixa puppet bent over the unfinished oracle puppet. The prophecy knife touched the blank mouth, not to cut it open, but to scrape something from inside the face. A tiny curl of black coalwood fell to the stage. The bride puppet lifted the stolen shaving to its own throat. The ceremony song changed. Not louder, older. The 7 chandeliers dimmed until only the puppets burned. A mark appeared beneath the painted veil of the bride puppet. A small black crescent at the throat. Shaped like the oracle mark Marixa had shown the court on the day of her first vision. Kairon went still. Olyssia heard the silence in him before he spoke. Marixa, he said, your first vision mark appeared after the old dragonfire rite. Marixa did not look at him. She looked at the unfinished puppet. And Olyssia saw the truth in that mistake. Marixa did not fear accusation. She feared recognition. The coal girl puppet picked up the shaving from the stage. Its hollow eyes glowed red. Then it walked to Olyssia and placed the shaving in her bleeding palm. The heat struck bone. For a moment her ring finger went numb. The shaving did not sit in her palm. It branded memory into it. This time Olyssia saw one clear thing. Her own hands, younger and unscarred, carving the oracle puppet's face while a woman in white gold silk watched from behind a half-open screen. Not Marixa crowned. Not Marixa chosen. Marixa waiting. Olyssia opened her hand. The black shaving lay there, burning without flame. On its surface, finer than a fingernail, was the first line of the stolen rite. Blood of the carver. Voice of the oracle. Kairon's ember mark dimmed. Not from doubt, from recognition. The court had not been promised a born oracle. It had been offered a voice carved out of someone else's blood. Marixa whispered, Stop. Then her face smoothed too quickly. A carver's blood blesses an oracle vessel, she said. That is not theft. That is service. But the white gold puppet raised the prophecy knife again. And this time it pointed not at Olyssia. It pointed at Marixa's throat, at the place where the oracle mark gleamed beneath her veil. Marixa did not cover her throat. That was how Olyssia knew the mark was not where the lie ended. The white gold puppet held the prophecy knife steady, its tiny black hand pointed toward the crescent gleaming beneath Marixa's veil. The theater had gone so quiet, that the old chandeliers could be heard breathing dragon fire above them, each flame tightening and loosening inside its glass cage like something alive. Bride Oracle Marixa Dorn stood halfway down the royal stairs, one hand resting lightly against the rail, not on her throat, not near the mark. She was too practiced for that. Fear made common women shield their wounds. Marixa made fear stand still and call itself dignity. A carver's blood blesses an oracle vessel, she said again, her voice smoother now, louder for the court. That is not theft, that is service. The priests in the second balcony stirred. High Priest Cauldron did not stir with them. He only lowered his eyes to Olyssia's bleeding hand, as if measuring how much of the old cut had returned. There it was. Not in a sense. Law. Olyssia felt the black shaving burning in her palm. Her ring finger had not fully woken. The coalwood splinter lay against her skin like a small buried tooth, pulsing with borrowed heat. Dragon King Kairon Sol stepped down from the royal box. The movement changed the theater before he spoke. Nobles straightened. Guards lowered their eyes. Even Marixa's attendants stopped breathing too visibly. Kairon did not look at the white gold puppet. He looked at Marixa's throat. Was her blood used in your first vision? He asked. The question did not roar. That made it worse. Marixa's smile trembled only at the edge. My king, every oracle vessel is prepared by lesser hands. The rite requires service. Carvers shape, priests bless, dragonfire wakes. I did not write the old law. No, Olyssia said. You only hid behind it. Kairon turned slightly toward her. She did not give him softness. He had let the court turn her pain into a cleansing spectacle. He had watched her stand barefoot on a stage made for humiliation. He had protected the marionettes first, then her hands only when proof needed them. His fear did not become forgiveness just because it finally had the right target. Marixa lifted her chin. Olyssia Vale offered her work to the first vision rite. The temple has witness ledgers. I offered a vessel, Olyssia said, not my blood. A priest rose slowly in the second balcony. High Priest Cauldron, keeper of oracle rites, thin as a candle burned too long. The distinction may be difficult. Carver's blessing is sometimes taken in symbolic form. Olyssia looked up at him. Symbolic blood does not numb a finger 7 years later. A low murmur moved through the theater. The white gold puppet lowered the prophecy knife until its point touched its own painted throat. A dark coal smoke crescent glowed beneath the paint, matching the mark under Marixa's veil. Marixa's eyes flashed. These puppets were carved by her. Of course they mimic her accusation. Coalwood cannot invent, Olyssia said, but it can be guided. Yes. She closed her injured hand around the shaving. Pain sparked up her wrist. By heat, Kairon's gaze dropped to her palm. Blood had started to run again between her fingers. His voice hardened. No one cuts her palm again. Then, quieter, as if the words cost him, not for proof, not for right, not for me. The command hit the theater like a barred door. Olyssia laughed once without humor. Kairon looked at her. She met his eyes. You are late learning where the wound is. His jaw tightened. Good. Let it hurt. The coal girl puppet moved to Olyssia's feet and held up the severed silver string it had taken from the bride puppet. The string glowed faintly where it touched the black shaving. Olyssia understood. Coalwood remembered heat, but string remembered handling. If the shaving had been stolen from her oracle vessel, the string might still carry the hand that bound that theft to Marixa's ceremony. She crouched, slower than she wanted, her ring finger dragged uselessly against her palm. When she tried to straighten it, the joint answered with cold numbness instead of pain. Kairon took one step toward the stage. Olyssia did not look up. Do not. He stopped. That was something. Not enough. But something. She pressed the black shaving against the glowing string. The stage darkened. This time, the memory did not open as a scene. It opened as pressure. A smaller chamber. Dragonfire sealed inside a black shell brazier. Her unfinished oracle puppet lying face up on a stone table. Marixa younger, veilless, not yet crowned with prophecy. High Priest Cauldron standing beside her with a silver bowl. A knife passing through flame. Then a hand. Olyssia's own hand. But limp. Not offering. Held down. She gasped and nearly dropped the shaving. The coal girl puppet caught her wrist with both tiny hands. Not controlling. Anchoring. Olyssia forced herself to keep reading. Marixa's voice came from the old heat. Not clear enough for all words, but enough. The court will believe what the fire marks, Cauldron answered. The carver must not remember the cut. Behind Marixa, beyond the brazier smoke, another figure stood hidden in the heat shadow, not speaking clearly, only raising one hand. Giving the first command, the memory broke. Olyssia found herself kneeling on the stage with the entire court staring down at her. High Priest Cauldron's face had gone the color of old ash. Marixa looked at him once. Too fast. Kairon saw it. Priest Cauldron, he said. The priest lowered his head. Majesty, heat memory is not lawful testimony unless witnessed by sanctioned flame. Marixa seized the line. Exactly. She kneels inside her own craft and calls it proof. She has spent years resenting my gift. Olyssia rose with effort. The black shaving had left a crescent burn across her palm, not open blood. Imok. The white gold puppet lifted its knife again and turned toward the unfinished oracle puppet. This time, the coal girl stood behind it and placed the severed string across the blank mouth. Olyssia looked at the shape. Her breath caught. That is not a blessing line, she said. Kairon's voice dropped. What is it? Olyssia held up her marked palm. The crescent burned in the exact curve of the oracle mark beneath Marixa's veil. It is a transfer cut. Marixa's face went still. The puppet's knife pressed into the unfinished oracle mouth. A shaving curled free. Then the bride puppet lifted it to its throat, and the crescent mark beneath its painted veil burned black-red. Olyssia whispered. Her oracle mark was not awakened by dragonfire. The theater listened as if listening could save it. The white gold puppet pointed the knife one final time at Marixa's throat. Olyssia finished. It was burned through a stolen carver's shaving. The crescent beneath Marixa's veil flickered. Not dying, feeding, and Olyssia understood the worst part. The mark was still warm. The mark was still warm. That meant the theft had not ended 7 years ago. Marixa covered her throat only after Olyssia said the mark was feeding. It was one small movement, graceful enough to look accidental, but the whole theater saw it. Her white gold fingers touched the crescent beneath her veil as if to steady a jewel. The white gold puppet copied her. Tiny wooden fingers rose to its painted throat. Then the puppet's crescent mark pulsed black-red under the stage fire. A murmur moved through the balconies. Marixa lowered her hand. A living oracle mark responds to challenge, she said. Every priest here knows that. High Priest Cauldron stood in the second balcony, thin and pale beneath the dragonfire chandeliers. The bride. Oracle speaks correctly. A transfer cut is not forbidden when made in service of a vessel prepared for prophecy. Olyssia looked up at him. Her ring finger still would not answer. The crescent burned across her palm, shallow but hot, as if the old cut had found its way back through the years. Service, she said. Cauldron's eyes did not meet hers. Your consent was recorded. The word struck harder than accusation. Consent. The court liked that word. It made theft look clean if a priest wrote it neatly enough. Olyssia closed her damaged hand. the numb finger folded late, stiff, and wrong. A carver knew her own hand better than her own face. She knew which tremors came from pain and which came from lasting harm. Kairon saw the movement. His jaw tightened, but he did not speak quickly this time. Marixa did. Olyssia carved the vessel for the first vision right. She gave her work to the temple. If flame used what she offered, that is not theft. It is fulfillment. Olyssia turned toward her. I offered wood. Marixa's smile returned. And wood needs blood to wake. No, Olyssia said. Wood needs truth near fire. Blood only makes it obey faster. The coal girl puppet lifted its head. The unfinished oracle puppet still lay beneath the prophecy knife, blank mouth cut open by memory. Its hollow face looked less like a doll now, and more like a witness that had been interrupted before it could speak. Kairon descended the last step from the royal box and stood at the edge of the stage. He did not come onto it. Good. Olyssia did not need him beside her yet. He looked at Cauldron. Bring the witness ledger. Cauldron's mouth thinned. Majesty, opening temple consent record during a consecration would humiliate your oracle bride before the full court. Marixa went still, and for one heartbeat, Olyssia saw the trap she had built around him. If Kairon opened the ledger, he stained the oracle bride before the court on the night of her elevation. If he refused, he continued ruling through a voice carved from Olyssia's stolen blood. Kairon looked from Marixa's veiled throat to Olyssia's hand. The theater waited to see which woman would be made bearable for the crown. Olyssia spoke before he could choose too easily. Do not open it for me. His eyes cut to hers. She lifted her injured palm. Open it, because if her vision is lawful, the consent line should survive being seen. Kairon absorbed the blow. Not anger, not forgiveness either. A king, learning late, still learned on the bodies of those who had been right too early. Bring the ledger, he said. Cauldron did not move. Kairon's ember mark brightened. Now. A temple clerk hurried from the side passage with a narrow black book chained in silver. He carried it like a relic, or a snake. The witness ledger was placed on a small altar table near the stage stairs, close enough for the court to see its cover but not its pages. Cauldron descended slowly. Only sanctioned flame may open consent record. Then use sanctioned flame, Kairon said. Cauldron touched a taper to one chandelier flame and brought it down. The ledger seal softened but did not open. The coal marionettes turned toward Olyssia. All of them. Marixa whispered, Do not indulge this. Olyssia looked at the ledger and understood before anyone said it. The book was not refusing flame. It was refusing a clean reading. The consent line had been heeded by the same rite as the puppet, and Colwood had carried the echo back into the theater. Her hand would be needed again. She hated that before she feared it. Kairon saw her face change. No. Olyssia laughed once, cold and tired. You do not get to forbid the cost after allowing the wound. His expression tightened. She stepped toward the ledger. Cauldron's hand shot out. The record may burn an unapproved reader. Olyssia looked at him. Did it burn me the first time? The priest went silent. The coal girl puppet climbed onto the altar table and laid its severed silver string across the ledger seal. The thread smoked where it touched black leather. Olyssia placed her injured hand beside it. Not on the seal yet. Beside it. Her ring finger curled inward without her permission. Panic rose in her throat, sharp and private. If the numbness spread, she would lose more than this argument. She would lose carving, the one thing the court had not been able to take by mockery. Kairon stepped closer. She did not look at him. Do not touch me for the court. He stopped. No one cuts her palm again, he said, voice low enough to sound like a vow and not enough to deserve being one. Olyssia answered without turning. Then watch what was already cut. She pressed her marked palm to the ledger. The book opened. Not to a page. To heat. Olyssia saw a chamber of black shell. Her younger hand forced over the unfinished oracle puppet. Cauldron's fingers pressing her wrist down. Marixa's veil hanging from a chair, not yet earned. A knife passing through dragon fire. And the hidden figure beyond the brazier smoke. A sleeve of dark royal scale. A hand wearing a ring Olyssia did not recognize. Then the ledger page appeared beneath her palm. The consent line glowed. Cauldron reached for the book. Kairon caught his wrist before he touched it. Olyssia bent over the page, fighting the numbness climbing into her middle finger now. There was no signature. No offered mark. No clean line of willing service. Only 4 words burned into the place where consent should have been. Hand held on her flame. The ledger did not close. That was the first mercy it refused to offer. Its black pages lay open beneath Olyssia's damaged hand, the 4 burned words glowing where a willing signature should have been. Around the altar table, the coal marionettes stood perfectly still, their severed strings pooled at their feet like shed veins. Even the ceremony music had thinned to a single trembling note. Kairon still held Cauldron's wrist. The priest did not struggle. That made him look guiltier than fear would have. Marixa recovered before the court did. Hand held under flame is temple phrasing, she said, clear enough for the upper balconies. It means the carver's hand was guided by sacred office. Nothing more. Olyssia looked at the page. Her middle finger had begun to lose feeling now. Not fully. Not yet. But enough that she could not tell whether the nail still touched the ledger or hovered above it. She lifted her hand slowly. The burned words remained. Cauldron lowered his eyes. The bride oracle speaks correctly. Some candidates become overwhelmed during vessel blessing. A priest may steady the hand. Olyssia laughed once. It hurt more than she expected. Steady? She said. You call that steady? Cauldron's mouth tightened. You were younger, frightened, ambitious. The temple gave you the honor of service. Olyssia looked at Kairon then, not because she needed him to defend her, because she needed him to hear what power sounded like when it dressed a violation as an honor. His face had gone very still. Marixa touched her throat again, then seemed to remember the puppet still pointed its knife there. She lowered her hand. This is why the old rites were never meant for theater. A wounded woman hears accusation in sacred language. A wounded woman, Olyssia said, remembers who held the knife. The white gold puppet twitched. So did Cauldron. Kairon released the priest's wrist, but not because he forgave the movement. He stepped between Cauldron and the ledger. The page stays open, he said. A ripple passed through the court. Marixa's eyes flashed. My king, you would let her turn my consecration into a trial? Kairon looked at the stage, at the puppets, at the ledger, at Olyssia's hand. No, he said. You did that when you made her humiliation part of the rite. The words struck the theater hard. Olyssia did not soften. Not yet. Maybe not for a long time. The coal girl puppet climbed onto the altar table and placed both tiny hands beside the burned consent line. Its hollow eyes glowed faintly, waiting. Olyssia understood the demand. The ledger had shown the wound, not the hand behind it. Colwood remembered heat. The ledger remembered record. Neither could give the full truth alone. A carver had to follow where the heat crossed from object to oath. She reached for the page again. Kairon caught himself before he touched her. Good. At least he had learned that much. Olyssia, he said, voice low, your hand. She looked down. Her ring finger hung slightly crooked. The middle finger trembled without command. The crescent burn in her palm had darkened from red to black at the edges. "If I stop now," she said, "they will call the first wound temple language and bury the second under ceremony." Cauldron said, "There is no second wound." Olyssia looked at him. "Then why are you afraid of the next page?" The priest said nothing. Marixa smiled with all her teeth hidden. "Because the next page concerns royal witness, and if she opens that, she touches the king's household. Let the court see what she truly wants." There it was, the next trap. Make the evidence sound like ambition. Make truth look like a woman reaching above her place. Chiron's ember mark burned brighter. "Open it." Marixa turned on him. "Chiron." He did not look at her. "If my household witnessed this, then my household will be red." Olyssia placed her damaged hand on the edge of the next page. Nothing happened. The ledger stayed cold. A whisper moved through the balconies, hungry for her failure. Then the unfinished oracle puppet lifted its blank face and raised one carved arm toward Marixa's ceremony veil. Olyssia followed its gesture. Heat did not always stay where blood had fallen. Sometimes it clung to the cloth that watched. "The veil," Olyssia said. Marixa went still. Kairon saw it. "Remove it," he ordered. Marixa's voice softened. "You would unveil your oracle bride before accusation puppets?" Olyssia looked at him. There was the choice again. Protect the image or read the wound. Chiron stepped closer to the royal stairs. "Remove it." Marixa did. Slowly. The oracle mark at her throat glowed black-red, brighter without the veil, but Olyssia did not look at the mark. She looked at the inner hem of the veil, where white gold silk had been folded over and stitched twice. Too thick. Marixa held the veil out, as if surrendering nothing. The call girl puppet reached for it. Marixa pulled back. Chiron's voice dropped. "Give it to her." "To the puppet?" "To the carver." That correction landed quietly. Olyssia took the veil with her good hand. The silk was warm. Too warm. She laid it beside the ledger. The coal girl pressed the severed silver string across the stitched hem. The unfinished oracle puppet lowered its blank mouth over the fabric. Olyssia used the smallest finger she could still feel and traced the seam. Heat opened. Black shell chamber. Dragon fire. Her hand held down. Cauldron's voice counting the right. Marixa's breath quick with hunger. A second hand pressing over Olyssia's knuckles. A ring flashed. Dark gold. Dragon scale setting. Royal household craft. Not Chiron's ring. Alder. The hidden figure behind the smoke spoke at last. Not clearly enough for a name. Clear enough for command. "Do not let the carver wake before the mark feeds." Olyssia tore her hand back with a gasp. The ledger turned its own page. This time the witness line burned before anyone touched it. Royal household witness present. The theater seemed to tilt. Chiron stared at the line. Marixa whispered, "No." The unfinished oracle puppet raised both hands to its blank face. Then slowly, with a sound like coal cracking under pressure, it opened the mouth Olyssia had never finished carving. Inside was a strip of white gold thread, the same thread as Marixa's veil, and burned along it, in letters small enough to hide inside a puppet's throat, was a command no blessing rite should have carried. "Keep the carver asleep until the oracle speaks." The white gold thread began to smoke, not burn. Smoke? That was what made Olyssia step back from the altar table with her damaged hand pressed against her chest. Fire destroyed. Smoke hid. The thread inside the unfinished oracle puppet's throat curled like a living vein, carrying the burned command in letters too small for a court to pretend it had not seen. "Keep the carver asleep until the oracle speaks." No one applauded now. No one even whispered. The Dragon Court Puppet Theater had been built for beautiful lies. Painted masks, tragic songs, carved kings who could die on stage and rise again for the next feast. But this silence had no artistry in it. It was the silence of nobles discovering that a spectacle had become evidence. Marixa moved first. She reached for the puppet. Olyssia caught her wrist. The motion cost her. Pain flashed up from her palm, then vanished halfway through her fingers, leaving something worse behind. Numbness. Her ring finger and middle finger bent late, like they belonged to another woman. Marixa looked down at Olyssia's grip, then smiled. "Careful," she said softly. "If your hand fails, what will you be without carving?" Olyssia tightened her hold. "A witness." The word stripped the smile from Marixa's face. Kairon stepped onto the stage. The boards creaked beneath his boots, not because they were weak, but because the Dragon King had never stood there before. Kings watched theater. They did not enter it. They did not stand beneath the same chandeliers that had been lit to make a woman's humiliation holy. Tonight he did. "Step away from her," he said to Marixa. Marixa's eyes glistened at once, beautiful and ready. "From her? Or from the object she has enchanted against me?" Olyssia released her wrist before Kairon could answer. She did not want rescue mistaken for truth. "The thread is not enchanted," she said. "It is hidden." High Priest Cauldron descended to the stage with the caution of a man approaching a blade he had once sharpened. Hidden temple material is not uncommon in oracle vessels. Sleep commands are used during intense prophetic awakening to prevent shock. Olyssia looked at him. "Then why hide it in the puppet's throat?" Cauldron's lips thinned. The coal girl puppet climbed onto the altar table and pressed one wooden hand against its own mouth. Olyssia understood. The throat. The voice. The command had not only kept her asleep, it had waited until Marixa spoke. She touched the white gold thread with the one finger that still answered fully. Heat opened. Not a full scene. Not mercy enough for that. A taste of smoke. Her body on the black shell chamber floor, younger, limp, breath shallow. Her unfinished oracle puppet above her on the stone table, Cauldron's hands stained with soot. Marixa kneeling in white silk, throat bare, eyes wide with hunger and terror, and the hidden royal hand pressing a ring into melted wax. The same dark gold ring, dragon scale setting. A woman's sleeve, black court silk. Olyssia tore free of the heat before it could pull her under. "A woman," she said. The theater shifted. Kairon's expression changed. Not relief, not surprise. Recognition trying not to become fear. Marixa saw it too and struck first. Royal household witness does not mean guilt. Many ladies served the old rites. Your court mother, your aunt, your chamberlain's widow, half the women who kept the palace alive during the ash famine. Will you have your bride humiliated because a bitter carver sees shadows in smoke? Kairon did not look at her. "Olyssia," he said, "what did you see?" She hated how careful his voice was. Careful meant he was bracing for a name he already feared. "I saw a woman's sleeve," she said. "Black court silk, a dark gold ring with dragon scale setting." A woman in the third balcony made a small sound and covered it with her fan. The coal marionettes turned toward her. All of them. The woman lowered her fan slowly. Lady Sorel Vorn, keeper of the bride chamber, Marixa's senior attendant. Olyssia had seen her behind Marixa for years, always holding veils, keys, cups, witnesses, the kind of woman courts forgot because she never stood at the center of any crime. She carried the things crimes needed. Sorella stood. Marixa's face remained flawless. Too flawless. Kairon looked up. "Lady Sorel." Sorel bowed. "Majesty, come down." Marixa turned sharply. "My king, you cannot summon my bride chamber in the middle of consecration. I can summon anyone who stood near a command to keep a woman unconscious. Sorel descended the balcony stairs with no guard touching her. That was the power of old service. It trained people to step aside before they understood why. When she reached the stage, the coal girl puppet pointed to the white gold thread. Sorel looked at Olyssia's hand first. Not the thread, not the puppet, the hand. Olyssia felt sick. You remember the cut, Olyssia said. Sorel answered too quickly. I remember many rites. Cauldron said. Lady Sorel served as chamber witness. Nothing more. The coal girl puppet lifted the thread. This time, the unfinished oracle puppet opened its mouth wider. Inside the hollow throat was not only thread, there was ash. Dark, packed ash, pressed into the inner wood like a swallowed secret. Olyssia's hand trembled. She knew that ash. Carvers kept ash from first shaping. The first ash carried the original voice of the wood before any rite changed it. She had stored hers in a small bone vial the night she carved the oracle vessel. The vial had vanished before the temple accused her of offering improper work. First ash, she whispered. Marixa's eyes sharpened. Too late. Olyssia reached into the puppet's throat. Her fingers nearly failed around the ash. She could not feel the middle one now. Panic clawed at her ribs. If she lost touch, she lost reading. If she lost reading, they would own even the shape of her past. She forced her fingers closed. The ash burned cold. The coal marionettes dropped to their knees. Not in worship, in listening. Olyssia opened her palm over the ledger. The first ash fell onto the consent line. Hand held under flame blackened. Then split. A second line appeared beneath it. One no priest had read aloud. Carver silenced until oracle claims voice. Kairon went still. Marixa whispered, That is not possible. Olyssia looked at her. Now Marixa had made the mistake. She had not said false. She had said possible. The white gold puppet raised the prophecy knife again, but this time it did not point at Marixa's throat. It pointed at Lady Sorel's ring hand. The dark gold ring on Sorel's finger cracked once. Inside the split band, something red began to glow. Notrube, dragon fire wax, a sealed witness mark. And from the hollow throat of the unfinished oracle puppet, Olyssia's own stolen voice whispered one word. Claimed. Lady Sorel closed her fist around the cracked ring. Too late. The red glow inside the split band had already touched the stage, and the coal marionettes had already turned toward her as if every hollow eye could hear what the court was trying not to. Kairon looked from the ring to the unfinished oracle puppet. What was claimed? No one answered quickly enough. Olyssia did. My voice. The words sounded impossible even to her, because she could still speak. She could still stand on the stage and say what had been done. But the whisper that had come from the puppet's throat had not been breath. It had been the heat of the first vision rite, the part of her craft that shaped prophecy vessels before priests learned how to dress theft as blessing. Marixa recovered with terrifying grace. A carver's ritual voice may be claimed by the oracle vessel. That is old temple law. Old temple law also said consent must be recorded, Olyssia said. Cauldron lifted his chin. It was recorded. The consent line on the ledger burned darker. Hand held under flame. Carver silenced until oracle claims voice. The theater did not need a judge to understand the ugliness of those words. It only needed eyes. Sorel finally spoke. I served as chamber witness. I did not command the rite. The cracked ring on her finger pulsed red. The coal girl puppet raised one tiny hand. Lie touched heat. Olyssia felt the answer before the court did. The splinters in her palm heated again, but not sharply this time. Slowly, deeply. like something burying itself farther beneath skin. Her middle finger would not move. She hid the fear by lowering her hand. Kairon saw anyway. He stepped onto the stage fully now, black cloak dragging through coal ash. The consecration is suspended. Marixa's head turned. For the first time that night, her beauty did not smooth over the crack fast enough. "My king," she said. "To suspend an oracle bride before the court is to wound the prophecy of your reign." "No," Kairon said. "To continue would be to enthrone a stolen voice." The words struck Marixa harder than accusation, because they sounded like law beginning to change shape. Cauldron moved at once. "Majesty, if you break a claim vessel without proper right, the damage returns to the source." Olyssia looked at him. "Meaning me, meaning your hand, your craft, perhaps your speech." His eyes dropped to her fingers. "The vessel has held the claim for 7 years. Severing it violently may take what remains." Kairon went still. There it was, the prison behind the proof. Expose the theft and lose the last parts of herself it had not already taken. Marixa's voice softened. "No one wants that, Olyssia. Let the temple close the rite properly after the ceremony, privately." Olyssia almost laughed. Privately. The word courts, used when truth became inconvenient in public. The unfinished oracle puppet opened its mouth wider. The strip of white gold thread trembled inside its throat. Beneath it, the first ash stirred, black and alive. Olyssia understood what it wanted. Not more performance? Ah, kut. The claim had been tied inside the puppet's throat. To read where it led, she would have to reach into the vessel and pull the knot free by touch, with fingers that were already failing. Kairon understood half a breath later. "No." Olyssia looked at him. "You cannot keep saying no after making yes so expensive." His face tightened, as if she had struck him. Good. She wanted the truth to leave bruises where apology would have been too easy. Sorel stepped back toward the stairs. The coal marionettes moved as one, severed strings dragging softly across the stage. Not attacking, blocking. Sorel stopped. Marixa's eyes flashed. This theater has become a cage. Olyssia looked at her. "You built it for me." She turned to the unfinished oracle puppet. The coal girl climbed beside it and placed both carved hands on the vessel's blank cheek. Waiting. Not saving. Asking. Olyssia reached into the puppet's mouth. Pain did not come first. Absence did. Her numb fingers slid along the thread and found nothing. No texture, no edge. For one terrifying breath, she could not tell whether she touched silk, ash, wood, or empty air. Then the crescent burn in her palm flared. Feeling returned as fire. She bit back a cry. Kairon took one step and stopped himself so violently his hand curled into a fist at his side. Olyssia found the knot. It was small, hard, and warm as a living tooth. She pulled. The puppet's head snapped back. Every chandelier flame bent toward the stage. Sorel gasped. Not from fear, from pain. The cracked ring split wider, and red wax oozed from the band like blood from a sealed mouth. Olyssia pulled the knot free. A cord of white gold thread came with it, looped around a tiny shard of coal wood. The shard was carved with one symbol, an open mouth crossed by a bride veil. Marixa whispered, "Do not read that." Kairon turned on her. "Why?" Marixa did not answer. The coal girl puppet answered for her by placing the severed silver string across Olyssia's wrist. Anchor. Olyssia pressed the knot into her burned palm. The old heat opened. A chamber. Dragon fire. Her body unconscious. Marixa leaning close to the unfinished vessel. Cauldron holding the knife. Sorel pressing the ring into wax, and the hidden woman in black court silk stepping through the smoke. Her face remained blurred by heat, but her voice came clear. Bind the carver's voice to the bride. If the Dragon King hears prophecy from a wounded girl, he may choose pity over rule. Kairon's ember mark went dark. Not dim. Dark. Olyssia's knees struck the stage. The knot burned deeper into her palm, and this time her smallest finger went numb too. Sorel whispered, "I was ordered." The hidden woman's voice continued through the coal wood. "When the bride speaks, the court must hear destiny, not the girl we used to carve it." The white gold puppet lifted its knife. Slowly, it pointed away from Marionettes, away from Cauldron, toward the royal box behind the empty bride's seat, and from inside the unfinished oracle puppet, Olyssia's stolen ritual voice whispered again, "Queen Mother." The royal box went colder than the stage. That was the first place the truth reached. Not the priests, not the bride, not the court that had laughed too easily. The royal box, where black lacquer, dragon bone, and old blood sat above the theater as if height could keep shame from climbing. Kairon stood motionless beneath the chandeliers, his ember mark gone dark at his throat. Olyssia remained on her knees, one hand closed around the smoking knot of white gold thread. 3 fingers had failed her now. Her thumb and forefinger still answered, but even they trembled with heat that did not belong to the living. The unfinished oracle puppet whispered no more. It did not need to. Every face in the theater had turned toward the curtained chamber behind the empty bride seat. Marionettes found her voice first. "A heat echo is not a summons. High Priest Cauldron sees the line like a drowning man taking rope." "Correct. A coalwood echo can carry distorted fragments. It cannot accuse blood royal." Kairon did not look at Cauldron. He looked up, opened the inner curtain. No guard moved. That hesitation told the court more than obedience would have. Then the curtain opened from within. Queen Mother Avara's soul sat behind it in a chair of black ashwood, veiled in mourning silver, though no funeral had been called. She had watched the entire performance from shadow. Her hair was white, her posture immaculate, her face carved by old authority into something too calm to be comfort. She did not look surprised. That was the worst part. Olyssia felt the knot in her palm heat again. Marionettes lowered her head at once, not like a bride to a mother, like a servant to the woman who had chosen the shape of her rise. Kairon saw that too. Avara's soul rested both hands on the ashwood arms of her chair. On her right hand, a dark gold ring gleamed with a dragon scale setting, the twin of Lady Sorel's cracked ring. Only older, only whole. The coal marionettes turned toward her as one. Avara's gaze moved past them, past Marionettes, past the smoking ledger, and settled on Olyssia. "So this is the carver," she said. "Not woman, not witness. Carver." Olyssia forced herself upright. The movement nearly made her drop the knot, but she would not kneel while being named by the hand behind the cut. Kairon's voice was low. "Did you command the first vision right?" Avara looked at her son then. For the first time that night, Kairon seemed less like a king and more like the child an older power still expected to obey. "I preserved your reign," she said. The theater did not breathe. Marionettes' face smoothed with relief, not because innocence had arrived, because justification had. Avara continued. "The court required an oracle bride of sanctioned blood. The border houses required prophecy before they bent knee after your father's death. The dragon clans required a voice they would not question. I gave them one." Kairon's jaw tightened. "That was not my question." "No," Avara said. "It was your judgment, waiting to become one." Olyssia watched him absorb that. Power was cruelest when it spoke in the language of duty. It made wounds sound like architecture. Necessary, load-bearing, too important to remove. The coal girl puppet climbed onto the altar table and touched the open ledger. The words still burned. Handhill under flame. Carver silenced until Oracle claims voice. Marixa stepped forward. The Queen, Mother speaks the truth of the realm. I carried the Oracle mark because the kingdom required a vessel the court would trust. Olyssia's craft was honored through me. Olyssia looked at her. You keep calling theft honor because you wore silk while doing it. Marixa's eyes flashed. Avara's did not. The girl's vessel work was raw, the Queen, Mother said. Power without station is dangerous. Prophecy spoken from the wrong mouth can break a kingdom. Olyssia's numb hand curled against her side. So you broke the mouth. A murmur moved through the court, but it did not rise. Avara's presence pressed it flat. Kairon stepped between the royal box and the stage. No one uses her as a vessel again. The command sounded stronger than his others. Still, Olyssia did not thank him, Avara noticed. Her eyes sharpened with the first true interest she had shown. She has taught you anger quickly, Olyssia answered before Kairon could. No, you did. The coal marionettes lowered their heads. Not in worship. Recognition. Cauldron stepped toward the ledger. Majesty, if the Queen Mother authorized the vessel transfer during Regency emergency, then the right may be harsh without being unlawful. The consent line must be read under crown seal, not stage heat. There was no consent, Olyssia said. Avara looked at her damaged hand. You were a court artisan. Your craft belonged to the rights you accepted. My craft, Olyssia said, was not my blood. My hand was not a temple tool. My voice was not palace property. The words struck harder because she did not raise her voice. Kairon turned to Cauldron. Bring the crown seal. Cauldron hesitated. Avara smiled faintly. Careful, my son. If you read the crown seal before the court, you do not only question your bride, you question the woman who held your throne together while you were too young to know how fragile crowns are. Kairon looked at her. Olyssia saw the wound then. Not hers, his. A child king raised inside debt. A man taught that love and rule were the same hand when they held power over him. A son who had mistaken obedience for survival long enough to become dangerous to everyone beneath him. He did not look at Olyssia. Good. This choice could not be made by looking at the woman he had injured. It had to be made against the fear that raised him. Bring the crown seal, he said again. This time, the guards moved. A black iron coffer was carried from beneath the royal box. Its lock bore the Soul Dragon crest. When opened, it revealed a seal stone dark as cooled blood. The crown seal was not made for parchment. It was made for memory. It verified which commands had been spoken under royal household authority. The coal marionettes backed away from it. Olyssia understood why. The seal did not ask gently. It took. Kairon saw their retreat. Then he saw her hand. No, he said. Olyssia almost smiled. You keep saying that as if it can reach backward. This could take your craft. It already has part of it. Then let me read it. Avara's laugh was quiet. A king cannot read carver heat. That is why carvers are useful. Olyssia looked at Kairon. She is right. His face hardened. Not at Olyssia. At the truth. Olyssia stepped to the seal stone. The thumb and forefinger of her right hand still moved. Barely. She placed them on the smoking knot, then lowered both to the crown seal. Nothing happened. For one terrible breath, she thought even the proof had abandoned her. Then the coal girl puppet climbed onto the coffer and placed its severed string across Olyssia's wrist. Anchor. Olyssia pressed harder. Heat tore through her hand. She saw the black shell chamber again. Her younger body held under flame, cauldron chanting, sorrel sealing wax, Marixa waiting with bare throat. Then Avara, younger by 7 years, standing behind the brazier smoke, not hidden now, commanding. Cut the vessel voice from the carver, Avara said. Bind it to the bride. The first vision must belong to the woman the court will accept. Olyssia shook violently. Kairon moved. She snapped, "Do not." He stopped at the edge of the altar table, breathing like a man holding back a blade from his own hand. The memory sharpened. Marixa leaned toward the unfinished oracle puppet. The stolen shaving burned at her throat, and a voice spoke through the vessel. Olyssia's voice, not the voice she used now. The ritual voice of her craft, deeper, older, carrying heat and prophecy through carved wood. It said one sentence. Then the chamber erupted in white flame. Olyssia fell back from the seal, gasping. Her thumb had gone numb. The ledger turned another page. Avara rose from her chair. Too late. The first vision appeared in burned script across the black paper. The Dragon King will be undone by the woman whose hands remember ash. Marixa whispered, "No." Kairon stared at the line as if it had opened beneath his feet. Olyssia looked at her ruined hand, then at the coal girl puppet standing beside it. The court had been told Marixa's first vision proved she was destined to guide the king. But the stolen prophecy had never named the bride. It had named the carver. Avara reached the sealstone first. Not with panic, with ownership. Her silver mourning veil slid over one shoulder as she stepped from the royal box and descended toward the stage, every movement controlled enough to remind the court that queens did not need crowns to command a room. The dark gold ring on her hand glowed once, answering the crown seal like a locked door hearing its master's key. Kairon moved before she touched it. He placed himself between his mother and the altar table. The theater felt that choice. Avara looked at her son's hand blocking hers. Move. No. The word was small. It did what thunder could not. Marixa's eyes widened, then narrowed. High Priest Cauldron seemed to age 10 years in one breath. Lady Sorrel still held her cracked ring like a wound she could hide by closing her fist. Olyssia stood behind the altar table with her ruined hand pressed against her ribs. Her thumb had gone numb. Her ring finger and middle finger had already failed her. Only her forefingers still answered cleanly, trembling with the last thread of touch that belonged to her. The ledger burned open before them. The Dragon King will be undone by the woman whose hands remember ash. Avara's gaze did not leave Kairon. You see why I acted. Chiron's ember mark flickered darkly. You stole a voice to bury a warning. I preserved a throne from a threat. Olyssia laughed once, dry as ash. You cut a girl open because a puppet vessel spoke a sentence you did not like. Avara finally looked at her. Not with guilt, with calculation. You were not cut because you were weak, the Queen Mother said. You were cut because you were dangerous. The court heard that. So did Olyssia. For years, they had called her grasping, false, improper, a failed carver who confused craft with prophecy and shame with destiny. Now the woman who had ordered the wound named the real reason without apology. Dangerous. It should have felt like vindication. It felt like another chain. Marixa stepped beside Avara, her oracle mark still flickering under the veil. My king, the first vision warned that Olyssia would undo you. Everything the Queen Mother did was done to protect your reign. Kairon did not turn away from the ledger. No. Everything she did was done to control it. Control is how reigns survive, Avara said. Olyssia looked at him then, because that sentence belonged to the root of his first mistake. The silence, 3 days ago. The theater. The spectacle. The king who had thought humiliation was acceptable if it kept scandal quiet. Kairon knew it. She saw the knowledge land in him. He did not ask her to forgive the resemblance. Good. Marixa took one graceful step toward the open ledger. If the stolen line is true, then Olyssia is not a victim standing before you. She is the named undoing of the Dragon King. No court can ignore that. The balconies shifted. Fear changed direction. That was Marixa's genius. She did not need to erase proof once she could make proof terrifying. Olyssia felt it move across the theater. One breath ago, they had pitied her hand. Now they measured whether that hand might topple the throne that fed them. The Coal Girl puppet climbed onto the ledger and stood over the burned vision. Small, black, unbowed, its severed string dragged behind it like a dead law. Kairon looked at the puppet, then at Olyssia. Then let the truth undo me, he said. The theater froze. Marixa's face went white beneath its careful color. Avara's eyes sharpened with something almost like grief. You speak like a man, not a king. Kairon answered, I was raised to think those had to be different. Olyssia's throat tightened before she could stop it. She hated that. He had not earned tenderness because he finally chose a sentence worthy of him. A good line could not unmake a stage. It could not return feeling to her fingers. So she gave him the only mercy she could bear, a hard one. Do not make courage out of what you owe, she said. Kairon accepted it without flinching. Avara smiled faintly. She will teach you to bleed for theater. No, Kairon said. You taught me to make others bleed for order. The coal marionettes moved. Not wildly, deliberately. They dragged their severed strings across the obsidian stage and laid them in a circle around the altar table. The music changed again, losing its bridal sweetness. This time it sounded like old workshop rhythm. Knife against wood, breath over coal, a hand learning shape by pressure. Olyssia understood before the priest did. The theater was no longer playing Marixa's ceremony. It was returning to the first craft. The unfinished oracle puppet opened its mouth. The white gold thread inside trembled, still tied to the stolen shard. Olyssia heard her ritual voice trapped there, not speaking now, only pressing against the hollow like a bird inside bone. To reclaim it, she would have to cut the claim from Marixa's mark, not with a knife, with touch. Her hand would not survive it whole. Cauldron saw her understanding and moved quickly. Majesty, if she interferes with an active oracle mark, the recoil may kill the vessel or the source. Temple law forbids unsanctioned severance. Olyssia looked at him. Temple law held my hand under flame, because your consent was entered. Then read the full line. Cauldron said nothing. The ledger heard. The page shivered. A second line burned beneath the first vision, slower than before, as if the book itself feared what remained. Voice claim active, until bride mark is fed or broken. Marixa touched her throat. This time she could not pretend it was accidental. Olyssia's stomach turned cold. Phil? That was why the mark was still warm. It had not merely stolen from the past. It was still taking. Every oracle pronouncement Marixa made, every ceremony, every accepted vision, every court bowing its belief into her throat had kept the claim alive. Avara lifted her chin. Then do not break it. Let the mark finish what it was built to hold. Kairon looked at her as if he had never seen her before. Olyssia had. She had seen that kind of face in every noble who laughed while calling cruelty necessary. Marixa's oracle mark flared. The unfinished puppet jerked. Olyssia felt something pull inside her throat. Not her spoken voice. Deeper. Older. The ritual voice that had once moved through her hands into carved vessels. Marixa inhaled sharply. Then she spoke. But the sound that came from her mouth was not entirely hers. It carried Olyssia's warmth beneath it. The Dragon King must be guided away from the ash-handed woman. The court recoiled. Kairon's face changed. Olyssia grabbed the edge of the altar table with her failing hand and nearly collapsed. Her forefinger went cold. The coal girl puppet caught the white gold thread in both hands and pulled it taut between Marixa's throat and the unfinished vessel. For the first time, the link became visible. A thin, burning line stretched across the stage, from Olyssia's puppet to Marixa's mark. Through the crown seal, Kairon reached toward the line. It burned his fingers before he touched it. Olyssia forced herself upright. "No," she said, though the words scraped her throat raw. "It is mine to cut." Marixa smiled through stolen warmth. "Then cut it, Carver, and lose what is left of your hand." Olyssia looked at her numb fingers, then at the coal girl puppet waiting beside the thread, then at Kairon, who stood still because she had told him the cost was hers. She placed her last feeling finger against the burning line. The theater went black, and in the darkness her stolen ritual voice spoke from every puppet at once. Choose the hand or the truth. The darkness waited for her answer. Not like night, like a mouth. Olyssia stood inside it with one finger against the burning line, her ruined hand full of heat and absence. Around her, the puppets were no longer shapes on a stage. They were voices without bodies, coalwood throats carrying the sentence that had been carved into her life before she was old enough to know what a court could steal. Choose the hand or the truth. Marixa's laugh came through the dark, soft, and certain. There is always a price. Avara's voice followed, colder. A kingdom survives because someone pays it. Then Kairon's voice, closer than the rest, raw in a way she had not heard before. Olyssia. She almost turned toward it. Almost. But the dark was full of old mistakes, and one of his had been thinking his voice could arrive after the harm and still matter first. "No," she said. The burning line trembled beneath her finger. "I will not choose between what you stole and what proves you stole it." The puppets went silent. For one suspended breath, even Marixa stopped breathing. Olyssia pressed her numb hand harder against the line. Pain did not come. That frightened her more than pain would have. Pain meant a path was still open. Numbness meant the theft had found new territory. So she reached with something older than feeling. Craft. A carver did not only work by touch. Touch was the door. Memory was the room. Shape was what remained when the hand could no longer trust the skin. Her grandmother had told her that while guiding a child's fingers over coalwood grain, a true carver listens beneath the hand. Olyssia listened. The burning line stretched from the unfinished oracle puppet to Marixa's throat, through the crown seal, through the ledger, through every place power had touched the lie and called it necessary. It wanted her to cut it like a thread. That was the trap. Cutting would take her hand. So she did not cut. She carved. With the last feeling left in her forefinger, Olyssia traced the line backward. Not against it. Through it. The darkness cracked. The theater returned in shards of white flame. The coal girl puppet stood at Olyssia's feet, both tiny hands gripping the severed silver string. The unfinished oracle puppet arched on the altar table, its blank mouth open around the white gold thread. Marixa stood at the other end of the burning line, her oracle mark blazing beneath her veil like a hungry eye. Kairon was beside the altar, not touching Olyssia. His hands were open, burned across the fingertips from trying to reach the line. He had stopped because she told him to. He had stayed because leaving would have been easier. Olyssia spoke without looking at him. "The crown seal is in the claim." "I see it," he said. "No," she said. "You are still looking at the wound. Look at the law." He did. The crown seal pulsed where the burning line passed through it. Not merely witness, not merely memory, The royal household had not watched the theft from a distance. It had authorized the claim. Kairon's face hardened into something that did not ask anyone's permission to become terrible. He turned to the court. By crown authority, this theater is no longer a ceremonial house. Avara rose. Kairon. He did not look at her. It is a witness chamber. The words struck the walls. The 7 chandeliers flared white. The Dragon Court Puppet Theater answered him. Its obsidian stage split with thin lines of fire, forming an old legal circle beneath Olyssia's feet, beneath the puppets, beneath the ledger, beneath the crown seal. The balconies locked with a sound like iron teeth closing. No one could leave. Marixa's face went pale. You would bind your court to puppet evidence? No, Kairon said. I bind them to crown record. Then he placed his burned hand on the crown seal. The seal rejected him first. White fire crawled over his knuckles. He did not remove his hand. Olyssia looked at him despite herself. His jaw clenched, but he did not make pain a performance. He did not turn it toward her asking to be seen. He only held the seal down, forcing royal authority to remain inside the circle it had once used to hide. This command was made under my house, he said. Then my house will bear witness to its own rot. Avara's ring flashed. The coal marionettes turned. The dark gold band on the Queen Mother's finger cracked from stone to nail. For the first time, Avara Sol looked afraid. Not of shame, of exposure. The ledger pages turned violently, black paper whipping in fire wind until one final page opened. Crown Household Authorization. Vessel transfer approved. Carver's ritual voice bound to bride mark. Source to remain disgraced if memory returns. The court read it. No priest could soften it fast enough. No bride could rename it service. No mother could turn it into duty before the words burned themselves into every chandelier flame. Marixa staggered back. The burning line at her throat flickered. Olyssia felt the pull weaken. Not break. Weaken. Marixa understood at the same moment. Her hand flew to her throat. No, the word was not a denial. It was hunger being denied food. Olyssia stepped forward. Her ruined hand shook, fingers curled wrong, palm blackened with crescent heat. The white gold thread still tied her craft to Marixa's mark. The coal girl puppet held up the severed silver string. Olyssia took it, not with her numb hand. With her left? The court watched as if that were less dramatic than flame. It was not. Her right hand had been made into evidence. Her left had been ignored. That was where her choice lived. She wrapped the severed string around the burning line and drew it tight, not cutting, not tearing, but making a loop the way carvers looped guide thread around delicate joints before shaping a puppet's mouth. Then she spoke to the unfinished oracle vessel. Not loudly. No das aprist, es maker. Return what was taken. The vessel trembled. Marixa screamed. Her oracle mark split open in a crescent of white fire. From the mark came a sound that was not pain alone. It was stolen ceremony, swallowed ash. Olyssia's ritual voice dragged out of 7 years of prophecy and forced back through the path by which it had been taken. The burning line snapped loose from Marixa's throat. It did not strike Olyssia. It flew into the unfinished oracle puppet. The blank mouth closed, then opened again, and Olyssia's ritual voice spoke from the vessel one last time. Not bride, not oracle, vessel thief. Marixa fell to her knees. The white gold veil burned away from her throat. The crescent mark remained for one breath, black and empty, then cracked like painted clay. No blood came out, only ash. High Priest Cauldron dropped his ceremonial chain. Lady Sorrel covered her cracked ring hand, but the witness mark inside it had already gone dark. Avara stood above them all with her broken ring bleeding dragon fire wax onto the royal stair. Kairon lifted his hand from the crown seal. His palm was burned, but the seal was open. Marixa Dorn's oracle status is revoked, he said. Marixa looked up at him with hatred bright enough to be beautiful. You would throw away prophecy for her? Kairon did not look at Olyssia when he answered. That mattered. He was not making her responsible for his choice. I throw away a stolen voice. He turned to Cauldron. The temple witness ledgers are seized under crown law. Every rite performed through this mark will be read. Every carver, vessel maker, and artisan named in those records will be summoned, not buried. Cauldron whispered, Majesty, the temple will fracture. Then it was already cracked. Kairon looked to the guards. High Priest Cauldron is confined to the Eastern Rite Tower. Lady Sorel is confined to witness custody. Queen Mother Avara Sol will surrender her ring and withdraw from royal council until crown record is judged. Avara's face went still. You would put your mother on trial before craftsmen? Kairon's ember mark returned at his throat, no longer dark, no longer obedient. Before those she used. The court did not applaud. Good. Applause would have made it theater again. Olyssia stepped back from the altar table. Her knees nearly failed. Kairon moved, then stopped before touching her. A bitter part of her noticed. A tired part was glad. The coal girl puppet climbed down and placed both carved hands against Olyssia's ruined palm. Heat passed through the wood, gentler now. Not healing everything, not pretending the cost had vanished. Her thumb twitched. Her forefinger answered. Her middle finger stirred once, weak and uncertain. Her ring finger remained numb. Olyssia looked at it for a long moment. A victory that did not leave a scar was usually a lie. Kairon saw her looking. His voice was quiet. I will bring every healer in the dragon courts. She closed her hand slowly. You will bring every record first. He bowed his head. Not enough to make himself small before the court. Enough to show he had heard the order in her answer. Yes. Olyssia looked at the stage where her humiliation had been arranged as cleansing. The puppets stood without strings now, small black witnesses under white dragon fire. The unfinished oracle puppet lay still, its blank face no longer stolen, only waiting. Marixa remained kneeling beside the ashes of her mark. Avara stood unbowed, but no longer untouched. The court watched Olyssia differently now. That too was dangerous. Pity could become another costume. Reverence could become another cage. She lifted her damaged hand so every balcony could see it. This hand carved your first vision, she said. This hand was held under flame. This hand was called service, ambition, sorcery, and proof, depending on what the powerful needed it to be. No one interrupted. Olyssia looked at Kairon last. And this hand will not perform forgiveness. The words landed between them cleanly. Kairon accepted them as if they were sentence, not cruelty. No, he said. It will not. Then he turned to the court. Let the record show Olyssia Vale was not cleansed before the dragon court tonight. The crown seal burned once. Kairon finished. She was witnessed. The coal marionettes bowed to Olyssia, not because she was chosen, because she had chosen to remain. And above the stage, where they had tried to make her shame entertaining, every severed silver string fell from the rafters at once, shining as it dropped, harmless now, like rain, the theater had been holding for 7 years.